Oh, I need probably to turn on.
Teams right now that are playing well. Flyers winners of 6 of 7. And they captured 12-3 and 3 since December 1st. So what gives tonight, Brian?
Yeah, it's a Washington team that didn't have a very good start to the season, but they have fixed it. This was, a lot of people wondering, was this the end of this Washington Capitals era? Was it time to move on from, certain players or maybe even the coaching staff that has had so much success here over the last couple of years? Obviously, this isn't the staff that won the Stanley Cup, but still, Peter Laviolette and Kevin McCarthy and those guys have certainly found their way with this team. But, everybody's wondering what's going on. Well, they kind of found their way. And then on Sunday I think, they got back 2 key pieces to this team, Nick Backstrom and
TJ Oshie.
Tom Wilson, who have been, out the entire year up until now. Now they're back. And so Washington, even before those guys were there, since Thanksgiving, they were tied for the second best record in the league in terms of points. So they have found their way again. And, obviously all the hubbub with Alex Ovechkin and passing Gordie Howe and all that, that's been a big spectacle around this team. But this is a different Flyers team than the one that played them back when we got 2 of those empty netters here a while back. Flyers seem to have found their way as well. So, I think it's a underrated matchup here tonight between these 2 teams.
Flyers didn't like that second empty netter, if I recall. Travis Konecny took particular exception to it. I think he felt like Ovi kind of slowed down and rope-a-doped it a little bit. And didn't like the way that played out. But maybe it was a little bit of poor sportsmanship. I had no problem with it. I mean, look, if you're chasing down a record, you can get an empty netter, get them all.
That's right. Get there whatever way you take. I mean, it's still it's not like we're playing Pee Wee hockey anymore.
Yeah, this isn't rec league.
It's not one of those deals where you start passing every 5 passes before you can score or anything like that. This is the NHL, so it's a little bit of pride there. I think that night for the Flyers, that was one of those games that was really a 1-goal game until I forget who it was. Somebody threw it 170 feet blindly and went empty net before that all got going on. I thought, but. It's again, it's just one of those games where the Flyers had things going their way at least a little bit, and then they couldn't quite hold on for it. But again, this is a different team that they're playing right now, and it's going to be I think one of those games where might catch some people by surprise.
I think that part of that reaction to that empty net goal was something that Torts described earlier this year when I had him on the podcast. He talked about The Last Dance. He's talked about Michael Jordan manufacturing ways to hate your opponent. And while that wasn't manufactured, maybe the response is a bit manufactured, because Torts has talked about this hate list of things that, when you're ascending again, that you bring up and you remember when they did this. And now that they're on the way down and we're on the way up, we make them pay the price. So no check goes uncashed in this league.
It's not anything like instant retribution or anything like that, because
not instant.
At that time, the Flyers were at a point where they didn't really have any room for retribution. They weren't playing. It was the time when they were playing better than they were when they were winning, but they weren't winning.
Yeah,
they were playing better defensive hockey. They were giving up fewer chances, things like that, but they weren't scoring any goals, and so they were on a 10-game winless streak at some point. And he says during those times, you just have to sit there and take it, but you definitely take notes, and you remember, when things are going your way down the road, you take things back out.
Yeah, and when you look at Washington, and they've been running really good of late. I mentioned 12-3 and 3 since December 1st, and you look at their recent schedule. They had a 5-game win streak where they beat Toronto 5-2, they beat Detroit 4-3 in overtime, they beat Ottawa in overtime on the road. They beat Winnipeg. They beat the Rangers. I mean, you're talking about some pretty good teams here. I mean, they beat Montreal. They hung a 9 spot on them. And then they recently, they beat Columbus 6-2, and they just won their last game against Columbus 1-0. Darcy Kemper got the shutout on Sunday, so they have not been in action since Sunday. And they're a team that, when they get going with these guys back, and I think Tom Wilson returning is a big element for them because he takes a lot of attention off of other areas. He can play, he can put points up too, but he becomes a storyline unto himself. Ovi's always a storyline. Backstrom coming back is obviously a huge boost for that power play and for the production of Ovechkin, which is good no matter what. But getting Tom Wilson back adds a little extra something to this game tonight because we haven't seen him this year, and we know that he'll get running around a little bit.
Yeah, he's a polarizing figure in this league, that's for sure. There's some people that think he has no business being in this league, but there's a lot more that think he is the key element to a successful hockey club. Somebody like him, and he's got a little bit of what I remember Steve Downey being like when he was here all those years ago in the first couple of years after he was drafted. He walks that line, and when he's on the right side of the line, he is somebody that, like you said, draws attention. People get themselves worrying about stopping him, or really not stopping him so much as just inflicting pain on him, and then they forget about the Oshis and the Backstroms and the Kuznetsovs and the Ovechkins of the world, and those guys get their thing done. And so very effective there. And then, there are the times, obviously, when he's gone to the other side of the line, and that's when you usually see the league step in and, do all that sort of stuff. But, he's one of those guys that, he's like an Ulf Samuelsson or something like that. One of those guys that you hate when he's not on your team, but when he is. Now, even when Ulf Samuelsson was here briefly, I had a hard time wrapping my head around that, but you love him when he's on your team, and he's carved a heck of an NHL career out of being that kind of player. I mean, not a ton of points, but he's got 649 NHL games into tonight, plus 44. I mean, that's the kind of player he is. And this is, again, remember, this is a team that its bread and butter is its power play. And you've got a guy like Ovechkin whose plus-minus numbers are just, they're way down there. So for a guy like Wilson to be a plus 44 on his career, by context, Ovechkin has played more than twice as many games. He's only a plus 85. So, it's just a good spot for him here in Washington.
It kind of reminds me, and Egan will tell me during the break if I get this quote correct, but from the original Top Gun movie, not Maverick, not this new age Maverick stuff, but when Iceman, who of course is Val Kilmer, says to Maverick, Tom Cruise, "You're dangerous," and he says, "That's right, Ice. I am dangerous."
Yeah,
there's a little danger factor with guys like Downey, like Tom Wilson. You better know when they're out there.
You got to know when they're out there. Ryan Reeves is another guy like that as well. Where you're always you're looking over your shoulder.
Shear was dangerous.
Yeah, you're looking over your shoulder, and you're not fully concentrated on perhaps shutting down the guys that you would normally be shutting down if you didn't have that thing to worry about.
Risto needs to be dangerous.
He does. He could definitely add a little bit more of that element to his game. He is a big physical player, but he's not as intimidating as maybe he could be. I wouldn't say he's not intimidating. You go out there, and I'm sure you're watching yourself, but it's not like he's a cruise missile type guy just kind of floating around looking for his next target.
Yeah. Well, maybe it's a highway to the danger zone tonight. We'll find out. Let's take
How fast can Pat pull up that bumper?
Yeah, not fast enough. He's tired by this morning today, and I'll give him props for being tired.
Yeah.
All right, let's take our first time out. It is Flyers Caps tonight. We'll give you the numbers on Ovechkin on the season, and Kuznetsov his way. They're leading the way, but Ovechkin leading the way by far with this Capitals team once again. It just continues. He's knocking on the door of 30 goals already for the 958th time in his career. So we'll take a timeout. We'll be back with more on Flyers Game Day, brought to you by Betway on the Flyers Broadcast Network. Did I get the quote right, Pat? Egan? Back live at the East Food Hall. It's the Flyers and the Caps as Alexander Ovechkin. All right, Brian, give me some odds here on Ovechkin reaching 30 goals tonight. He's at 29 right now in the season in 43 games. He's got 48 points, and he's got 9 on the power play. Does he get a goal to get to 30? Is it a power play goal? What say you?
If he gets a goal, it's a power play goal. I would say 60-40 he gets it. The Flyers have been able to keep him off the score sheet completely on several occasions in the last couple of years, except overtime. Yeah. But they've done a decent job containing him, especially 2 years ago when they had to play the Caps 8 times. I think he didn't get the kind of numbers that you thought he'd get playing the Flyers 8 times. I guess the Rangers made up for that.
Yeah, Zibanejad.
Yeah, I mean, but it's probably a little bit to his side of 50-50, I think, but not a ton. The Flyers will be keying in on him, obviously. I would think anything, if he gets it, it's probably maybe even an empty netter instead of a power play goal, but we'll have to see. I don't know how
highly likely
these guys coming back into the lineup have altered their power play in Washington, but that's always the dangerous thing is picking your poison there amongst all those guys that are out there on that power play unit. If you're going to ignore Ovechkin, then you got to deal with Kuznetsov and Oshie and guys like that. So we'll see where it goes.
If you look at the Caps power play, when I say I don't care where their power plays rank, as long as they got Ovechkin, it doesn't matter much because you got to stay off it if you can.
Yep.
But would you be surprised to know that their power play, it's not amongst the NHL leaders. It's right in the middle of the pack. It's 16th in the league. It's clicking at 22.1%, which sounds really high. But in today's NHL, that's middle of the pack if you can.
Right. Yeah, it's been a very strange year in terms of power play numbers compared to past years. But yeah, it's I remember being surprised by that when they came through here last time that number was so low for them. Again, a lot of that, we're getting to the point of the year when you look at percentage and you got to stop and think, all right, that's great that it's that number for the whole year. What is it for the last month? What is it? Because if you have a bad start, your number's never going to get very, very high, even if you start coming out and clicking along at 30% for a month or so. You can kind of sneak under the radar there. So, it's always something you have to worry about with this team, though, no matter how well they seem to be doing it. It's just a matter of, for me, it's, can the Flyers penalty kill that's been kind of wreaking havoc on teams, what can they do against this one here tonight?
Yeah.
Hopefully, maybe we don't have to find out. That'd be nice. But if we do, we'll wait and see where it goes.
One of the other things that you always have to be cognizant of is the amount of shots that Ovechkin will take. And it's almost stunning, but Ovechkin doesn't lead the league in shots on goal. Shots taken. He's actually tied for third. David Pastrnak has got more in less games, mind you, 3 less games than Ovechkin. Pasternak's got 203 in 40 games. Ovechkin's got 187 in 43 games, tied with Jack Hughes, and also behind Timo Meier of San Jose.
Yeah, I guess he's
amazing.
Getting older, right?
Yeah, I guess he's getting trying to be a little bit more quality instead of quantity.
Yeah. I mean,
not much.
I think that a lot of guys, when they go through a career like Ovi's gone through, they get to a point where maybe their perspective kind of changes a little bit. It's not just shoot the lights out all times. Sometimes you're trying to, be a little bit more selective with what you do. Stuff like that. So that could be where he's at. But it's the Pastrnak shot, I don't think is as feared as the Ovechkin shot. Pasta's shot might be pretty accurate. He obviously gets his share of goals, but you don't have to worry as much about him, I think, as you do sometimes about a absolute rocket coming at you the other way.
No question. Yeah, Pasta can hit a hat trick the other night. We'll see Boston coming up on Monday for a matinee game, as a matter of fact.
1 o'clock. Martin Luther King Day,
Yeah.
Yep. So it's going to be, part of that whole thing.
Yeah, so interesting schedule coming up for sure. Kuznetsov's second in points on this team. He's got 36. Ovechkin's got the 48, more than a point per game. We go from, a team like Toronto that had, 4 guys at a point per game or more. You go to Buffalo, who had 5 guys at a point per game or more. Washington only has 1, and that's Ovechkin.
And that's surprising.
Yeah, that is surprising because Kuznetsov's a guy that's of that caliber, 42 games played. He's got 36 points, but only 6 goals. Dylan Strome has got 8 goals and 31 points. Connor Sheary, obviously numbers for Nick Backstrom. He's only played 1 game so far this season, doesn't have any points. So we'll keep an eye on him as well as the Flyers can take on the Caps here at Wells Fargo Center. We're at the midway point here now, Bri. Tonight drops the puck on the official second half of the season. And I was talking about this on Stick to Hockey, and I think also on Flyers Daily with Bill Meltzer, that the story of the first half of this season for me, while Konechny's a good story, a great story, in the way he's performed, and there's some other elements. I think the 2 biggest stories of this first half, one is that they're playing the kids no matter what, and we've seen some of them take steps forward. We have to see if they can remain doing that, and that they're playing these players to figure out who's who and what's what, and that the culture and standard of accountability is clearly being set without any compromises to players and their stature or contract, like Kevin Hayes, Tony DeAngelo, Travis Konechny, and others, that you got to play to a high accountability and standard or you're not going to play. Those, to me, are the biggest 2 storylines of the first half of the season.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I mean, it's we knew coming into this year that John Tortorella was going to bring certain elements to the hockey club, and one of them was that the one that we knew about, which was the accountability and the structure and things that even the players last year said they needed. They needed a coach that was going to come in and take care of stuff like that. Because the last, nothing against the last staff, but they really didn't a whole lot.
Yeah.
And some folks also left that were part of that. There was some a little bit of just a laid back attitude, I think, toward everything that was here for a while that is not here anymore. So we knew that was coming. The other thing, though, was that John Tortorella came in to this game after this team after a year off. He did not coach last season. He was a TV analyst. So he got to see things from that perspective. But given everything that went into the year before that, being the bubble year, if you will, and his penchant to focus on his team. He didn't know a whole lot about the group the Flyers had here. And he wanted to keep it that way. He didn't want any preconceived notions. He didn't want to call around and ask people about this guy or that guy or whatever. He didn't want to listen to folks here that said this about that guy or whatever. I mean, they'll listen to some things, like, when they say that, so-and-so looks like he did 4 years ago or whatever. But he wanted to have a fresh slate. He wanted to come in and evaluate everybody himself. And that's what he has been doing constantly over the course of this year, almost to the extent where I feel like it's not completely like this, but the assistants, Brad Shaw and Rocky Thompson, I feel are the ones that are the technical executors of what you would say maybe coaching the team in terms of game plans and stuff like that, where John Tortorella spends his time watching how players react in certain situations and how they, how they carry themselves when the team's ahead, how they carry themselves when they're behind. A lot of times he'll come out and say, yeah, I got to watch the tape because I was looking at things tonight. Well, that's him trying to go through and figure out what they've got here. So the fact that they've played everybody in every situation is part of that whole system. I don't think he was looking at this year as, obviously you want to win and you want to have morale up and all that, but he was looking at this year as the start of building something that's going to take more than 1 year to do, and that's the way he's treated.
Yeah, I think that people realize now that he came into this eyes wide open.
Yeah.
We saw a lot in the beginning of the year. Oh, Torts, he didn't come here for this. He's going to quit, blah, blah, blah. And I think he knew exactly what he was getting into.
Yeah.
And he prepared himself for it and wants to, build this thing back up the right way.
And it sounds to me, really, I get the sense that this would be his last stop.
He said it. Yeah.
I mean, it's not
a young man anymore.
Yeah, it's not like it's he's going to come here and he doesn't want to do this. He's going to go somewhere else. I think he wanted to come here and take one last run at everything and that's going to involve basically starting from the ground up in terms of the way the team plays, and not necessarily personnel, but everybody says rebuild, and they think, all right, we're going to get rid of everybody and all that. They are going to rebuild the way they play. Yeah. It's. I had to laugh. I was in the Longwood Gardens over the holiday break, and there's a sign there. There's a place they're renovating. It says Longwood Gardens Reimagined. I'm like, that's what we should call it. Yeah, Flyers Reimagined. so that's what they're doing. They are kind of rebuilding, but they're rebuilding the way the team plays and the way that they approach contests, as opposed to necessarily just cleaning house and bringing in new people. There's more than one way to do it, and that's what they're going about.
Let's take our last time out. We'll take you to the countdown to face-off with Tim Saunders and Steve Coates in the first period action between the Flyers and the Caps. It is Flyers Game Day, brought to you by Betway on the Flyers Broadcast Network. Back live at the East Food Hall. Flyers Caps tonight. Oh, always fun when Ovechkin's in town. We'll rue the day, Smitty, when he eventually does retire, probably at the age of 64. He's gonna. I feel like he does that.
I'm going to be retiring first. Yeah, it's hard to imagine this team without him. I mean, literally, we're going to be.
It's 02 or 04?
03, I think.
03?
Yeah, I think. The 04 draft, maybe?
Yeah.
So he didn't start till 05. But we're really creeping close here to 20 years. And I mean, how many guys in this day and age are on the same team for 20 years? I mean, it almost never happens anymore.
In fact, he should be an owner of that team.
Oh yeah. I mean,
what he's brought there.
He's it's echoes of Bob Clark, right? I mean, he came here in 1969 and went on to define the franchise for 40 years. There are two things that are synonymous, and I think that'll be the case here. And I can't imagine him ever wearing another jersey. I mean, he's one of those guys. Crosby's another one. Malkin maybe. Guys that you can't imagine them not playing for their team until they retire. So I guess anything can happen. But I mean, Wayne Gretzky was traded, right?
Yeah.
But still, they're guys that you just it's like a little bit like Vinny Lecavalier. I mean, you'll always think of Vinny Lecavalier as a member of the Tampa Bay Lightning, even though he was here for a brief spell. It's one of those things that is rarer and rarer in sports these days.
No question.
Yeah.
Let's take a look at the Flyers line combinations, courtesy of Inquirer.com's Olivia Reiner's Twitter. And it's going to be very similar to what we've been saying. I can't believe it's going on this long. We're
6
games
games in a row.
Yeah, I mean, Frost, Van Riemsdyk, and Tippett, Cates, Farabee, and Konecny, Lawton, Hayes, and Allison, Brown, Delaurier, and McEwen, York and Provorov together once again, Sanheim and D'Angelo, Sealer and Ristolainen, Carter Hart and Ned. I mean, it doesn't get any easier than that. I don't even need Olivia's Twitter for it. But I do appreciate what she does, though.
It is, it really is the consistency that we haven't seen all year long now. And John Tortorella talked about it today. He said, he really just, said to the media, he said, look, I'm not a wizard here. I don't have any secret information. I'm
not going to make up an answer.
It's just my gut. And we put these together, and I like what I'm seeing. I like the chemistry that's developing. I like the way that certain guys are playing off of each other, and so we're going to keep going. And it's something that we understand that I can't honestly say I've followed Torch's career too closely up until this point, but apparently he doesn't do it very often.
He told us. Remember that one pregame?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know that until he said it. But, he said it's uncommon
he said it with
for me.
A wry
period.
Smile.
Yeah. So here we go, and it's to me it's also part of that evaluation thing. I mean, you can't necessarily fairly evaluate a player if you're trying to see if he's going to be around for the long haul by making him play with a different guy every night. They needed to have this little stretch here where they can kind of keep things the way they are and let everybody get used to who they're playing with. So that's helped well.
Yeah, and he's not just talking about the offensive zone and generating either. He's
right.
talking about they changed something in their neutral zone, the way that they defend in the neutral zone, and that's made a big difference and got them in, back on the attack quicker in transition. And you and I have talked about it quite a bit, that when you can transition back to offense very quickly, it prevents the other team from getting into their structure, and you can really get some good opportunities. And for a team that had trouble scoring a lot of this season, all of a sudden over their last 12 games, they're averaging about 3.85 goals per game, which if that was extrapolated over the whole season, they'd be the second highest scoring team in the league.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yep.
All things considered.
You look at those numbers, and sometimes it's not necessarily what have you done for the whole year at this point. Again, it's what have you done recently? Because now the stuff that you've done before, it really doesn't matter. It's about playing from here, moving forward, and Flyers can do that. We'll see what happens the rest of the way.
Yeah. All right, we've got the Flyers and the Caps tonight. Flyers are winners of 5 of their last 6 games. They're coming off that goose egg against the Buffalo Sabres the other night, but it is Carter Hart tonight, not Sam Ersson, as the Flyers will look to shut down Alexander Ovechkin, Nick Backstrom, and the Washington Capitals. Stay tuned. Tim Saunders, Steve Coates. How about the countdown to face-off? They've got that on the way, followed by all the first period action from here at the Wells Fargo Center. You've been listening to Flyers Game Day, brought to you by Betway on the Flyers Broadcast Network.